Well, hello and welcome back. I am so excited for today. Today, I have Chris O'Neill on the show. Chris is an emotions coach for men and fathers. I have absolutely loved all of the content that he has been putting out into the world. And so I wanted to have him on here today to kind of explore some of the challenges that specifically men face around emotional expression, emotional processing, kind of help us to break down a few harmful stereotypes, and also just help my listeners to find some practical tools for emotional regulation and personal growth. So, this episode is designed for men on their own personal healing journeys and also for those who love men and want to be able to better understand them and better support them on their journey. So, thank you so much for being here, Chris.
Absolutely. Very, very happy to be here. And I really appreciated you reaching out when you did. We've been mutuals for a while now on social media, and I've stitched some of your stuff. You've some of mine, and I
Yeah.
loved the kind of at a distant interactions we've had. So when you
Yeah.
reached out, I was happy to hear it. So
Yeah, it's so fun to meet face to face. And when we had all of that scare around if TikTok was going to still
yeah,
exist or not,
yeah.
you're one of the few creators that I was like, I need to find him on another platform
Oh,
because what am I
thanks.
going to do if I can't follow his feed? So, yeah, I
That's great. I
truly love what you
appreciate
put
that.
out. Yeah, for sure. So, tell us, Chris, what led you to becoming an emotion coach for men and fathers?
Okay, let's see if I can whittle this down from the 20 plus years of journey that I've been on. Um I could go earlier. I'll just acknowledge the fact that I came from an authoritarian upbringing, and had issues with my own awareness of my emotion and emotional regulation and all of that. But really it started when I got into massage therapy.
Hmm.
I had been in the restaurant industry for a long time, and it was, in the weeds, crash and burn, go, 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 go. And I wanted to shift. I wanted to move into something a little more focused, quiet, you know, calm. And I really fell in love with body work because my mother was a massage therapist. So went to school. I've been doing that for 16 plus years. I really dug into uh, a technique I created called BCT, body communication therapy. And in doing that, I really became super aware of the difference between so many men and so many women having different clients over the years, of how connected people were to their bodies.
Hmm.
And just in general, obviously it's not, each individual is different, but the vast majority of the male clients that I had far bigger issues connecting their emotions, their psychology, and their physiology, and
Mm-hmm.
understanding those connections and what to do about them. It was just like, it hurts here, and I don't know why. They could identify things, but they
Mm-hmm.
couldn't follow the through line of where it came from and how it worked. And there are plenty of women who couldn't do that either, but in general, women tended to be more aware of those through lines
Hmm.
and could connect them easier. So when I would say, "Oh, this area of your body feels a certain way," she's like, "Oh yeah, because this happened and then I connected this and da 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 da." Whereas the guy
Mm-hmm.
was just like, "Yeah, it hurts. It's been hurting for a couple weeks. Well, what'd you do? I don't know. I lifted something. I don't know." It was just a very, this is what's happening, so I'd like this to happen. Um,
Huh.
I came to you for this, so, and they weren't horrible about it, but it was just, you're the practitioner, so tell me what I need to do.
Yeah.
And that lack of awareness of navigating it on their own, at least to the point that they don't understand, so then I can step in and help.
Right.
So the body communication therapy was literally an a real time investigation of what was happening, how that was connecting to their emotional state, psychology state, and all of that. And they were
Mm-hmm.
able to then have a better skill identifying certain things so that they could communicate to other therapists and get more proper healing. That led me to, well, it didn't lead me to becoming a father, but I became a father in 2018. And this was the beginning of a lot of dominoes for me. I kind of
Mm-hmm.
had just these really big moments. I became a father. Um, my sister died, and
Hmm.
I can go into detail about that. But it was a really big, obviously emotional experience for me. Um, then I turned 40. Then the pandemic happened. Then I lost my
Mm-hmm.
massage business. So it's just like boom, 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 boom. These things.
Mm.
And I thought I had a reasonably good handle on my emotions because I was so aware of things, but I was
Mhm.
just stuck in my head.
Yeah.
Like so many guys, and this is unfortunately, a big thing obviously we'll get to. "Oh, I figured it out. I have this knowledge now, so I understand. Cool." And then we just move on. No, 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 now you gotta do the work to change that thing, So I was in that category where I was like, "No, I get it. I'm aware of this now, so it's fine." And then when my sister died, that just wave of emotion that I had never knew I hadn't dealt with just
Mhm.
exploded all over everything, my family interactions, my extended family interactions, and all of that. So, losing my massage business because I couldn't see clients for a year during the pandemic,
Mhm.
I decided to pivot, and I was originally gonna do body awareness coaching, and I thought that would be
Mhm.
some self-massage, that type of stuff. But then when my sister died and combined with the pandemic and just being stuck inside for so long and internal reflections and all that, and I realized all the stuff I was going through, so many other men needed
Hmm.
that that awareness, that practice, all of that, and I was drawn to this idea of helping men to basically the way I viewed is become whole people.
Yeah.
Like, you're not
Hmm.
becoming less of a man. You're just expanding your skill set to be a better human being and by default a better man instead of being afraid and, trying to pretend and avoid these things exist
Hmm.
because that's how men are supposed to be. We are augmenting our skill and our ability to function in the world and in relationships and with our family so that we can be better for them and ourselves.
Yeah.
And I realized that doing the work for me and meeting all of these other men through a lot on my TikTok page is
Mhm.
that I was one of those, and I think this is true of most of us. My audience came by accident. I didn't set out
Hmm.
to have a big audience, and there are plenty of people with bigger ones, but um, it just happened,
Yeah.
and I realized that I had some influence, and what I was going through, so many other men are going through,
Hmm.
and I was like, I feel like I can help with this, so here we
Yeah.
are.
Well, that thank you so much for sharing all of that. It is obvious from the level of interaction on your page,
Hmm.
the impact that you've had and how needed the conversations that you're starting, how needed those conversations are. So I really appreciate you bringing your experience and your wisdom here. You touched on a few things that I would love to just ask a little bit more about if you're open to it.
Absolutely.
So first you said working as a massage therapist, you talked about the difference between the men kind of seemed to struggle a little bit more with communicating what was happening in the body and making those connections.
Hmm.
And so where do you think that that stems from? And is that how does that manifest that disconnection from the body versus the disconnection from emotions?
Well, and the interesting aspect to that question is there's connectivity there, right? Because emotions are
Yeah.
in the body. So
Right.
it's I feel like and there are always exceptions, of course. So there's
Mhm.
going to be a lot of generalization in a lot of these talking points, but I think they
Mhm.
apply more than they don't.
Mhm.
Um, where men are just kind of taught to steamroll past whatever their body's telling them
Hmm.
in order to maintain and man up and step up and all the sayings, right?
Right.
I'm hungry. Screw it. I got to finish this job, right? I'm thirsty. Whatever the need of the body coming up. I'm feeling overwhelmed. Can't admit that because then I would have to
Mhm.
acknowledge I can't handle so I'm out of control, right? So there is this perpetual need to prove ourselves as men that
Mhm.
seems to just supersede all of these biological functioning things that come up. So
Mhm.
years and years of that leads to just a lack of awareness of what certain things mean when they do come up.
Mhm.
So it's like if you push past it and push past it and push past it and push past it, eventually it's going to start yelling at you in a way that you can't push past. And then
Right.
you don't have all of this knowledge, awareness, and skill that you would have built if you paid attention a while ago. And
Mhm.
now you're at this like crossroads where you have to do something about it, but you haven't practiced anything, you have no idea where to start, what to do, and it's all really overwhelming, and then you
Mhm.
start the cycle all over again and push it back down, and then it just comes out in all these horrible ways,
Yeah.
you
Well, and
know?
to tie that together with your experience of grieving not just, the loss of your sister, but also the loss of your livelihood at that point and what you
Mhm.
were doing, um, how is it that grief manifests a lot of time for men? Like, I know that it seems to me, and you correct me on any of this, but that some emotions seem to be more allowed for men than others, as you
Oh
talk
god,
about, like,
yes.
"Oh, yeah, man up." What is grief like? Or what was it like for you?
Well, certainly, and it's so amazing how, one emotion bleeds into another, and that's true of anger, and I will say that, even though anger can be a very good thing, it's a self-advocacy emotion, right? It helps
Mhm.
you to stand up for yourself, but it's also a masking emotion,
Mm.
and it tends to be the one that men funnel everything through because that is the most acceptable emotion that men are allowed.
Hmm.
And this is a societal norm. This is not biology, right? So,
Okay.
grief, I feel like there's a lot of shame. There's a lot of shame attached to every emotion that's not anger coming from men.
Mhm. Mm.
Um, and that's the thing too. It's like knowing all of this stuff and doing my best to practice it in my own life
Mhm.
does not make me immune to all of the stuff I'm talking about. I still
Mm.
feel shame over crying or doing, it's still there. I can just
Mhm.
manage it better than I used to.
Mm.
So, I think grief, one of the biggest issues with grief is support and space, right? A safe space to be allowed to have these experiences. And granted, that's true of many emotions, but
Mhm.
um, it's it's very unsafe for men to have most emotions.
Mhm.
So we either end up going it alone or trying to go to the women in our lives and assuming that they're kind of the gatekeepers of emotion land anyway. So
Mhm.
let's just bring it all to them. And I know how jaded women are from having to deal with that. Um, so yeah, it keeps coming back to anger. It just pretty much everything manifests into frustration and anger. And ironically, a lot of that anger comes from being angry at ourselves for not
Hmm.
being able to figure this out. Because that's the so it's like grief leads to frustration, which leads to anger, which leads to grief, which, and then it's just this
Mhm.
circle.
Mhm.
And there's a difference between like the idea of stoicism.
Mhm.
Men in general, women too, but men in general, especially with the red pill bro podcasts everywhere telling men that they're supposed to do certain things. There's a difference between, I'll say, capital S stoicism and little s stoicism. The capital S stoicism is the classic ancient technique of
Mhm.
understanding, navigating, working with, being able to identify and move through emotional experiences, and
Mhm.
then not allowing certain actions that you feel compelled to do because of those emotions. So
Mhm.
the stoicism is controlling your actions because of your emotions. Whereas this idea of kind of modern stoicism is just, oh, I'm just not going to let my emotions affect me. No, 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 no. You're suppressing them. That's not the same thing.
Yeah.
So avoiding, denying, or pushing them away, or just trying to focus on something else is not being stoic. That's
Yeah.
that's being repressive.
Huh.
So
I love that. I've never heard that distinction before between the big S and the little s
yeah,
stoicism.
yeah.
Um, that's really insightful. And also when you were talking earlier about your experience with your own personal grief and everything, it kind of sounded a little bit like this belief that a lot of people have that, well, I can think through my emotions. I can logic through my emotions, and how sometimes that is a form of suppression. But what do you think on that?
Um, I the act itself. because it's an incomplete act.
Mhm.
That's interesting. Is it a form of suppression? I would say yes, because it is avoidance, but it's
Hmm.
unintentional avoidance, right? Because
Mhm.
you think you're doing something that you're not.
Mhm.
And the analogy, it's a very easy analogy. It would be like forever planning a trip that you never go on,
Mhm.
right? Well, I planned the trip. Look, there it is. Everything's done. Cool.
Hmm.
When are you going to go?
Yeah.
Well, what do you mean? What, you're not going to go on the trip you took this long to plan, right? It just doesn't make sense that you wouldn't do that. But
Mhm.
when we focus on, the emotional, the logicking your emotions,
Mhm.
not a word, but you get what I'm saying. Um, you're And the irony there too is that you literally can't be in both places at once. You can't be in your prefrontal cortex and your logic center and your
Yeah.
amygdala, your emotion center, right? It's one or the
Mhm.
other. And so when you're using your logic to think about your emotional state, you're simply either creating or acknowledging an awareness. You're
Mhm.
putting labels on things. You're dotting I's and crossing T's, which is a good thing.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
if you stop there, you're not actually doing the work to address the issue. You're just labeling the issue.
Hmm. Huh, yeah, I like that. Yeah, because I know I've worked with quite a few people where once they feel like they've learned a few tools, they think, "Because I know these tools,
Mhm.
I should never experience a negative emotion ever again."
Oh,
Well, yeah,
yeah.
totally, that would
That
be great, right?
Yeah.
But, like, slowing it down and recognizing, no, like, there is that logic piece where I can know why I'm feeling what I'm feeling, but it doesn't mean it's gonna take it away. It doesn't mean I'm
No.
never gonna experience an emotion again. It just
Right.
means I'll know better how to navigate it.
Well, and it's like saying putting a seatbelt on will prevent me from ever getting in a car accident. Well,
Right.
no, it will just most likely save your life. So,
Yeah,
you are better equipped to survive the experience and
yeah,
navigate it healthily, right?
yeah.
So, that's really what it is.
Hmm. Yeah. So, from your experience and perspective here, do you feel like men and women experience emotions differently?
Uh, yes and no, and I wanna be
Mhm.
clear. Biologically, no, and this is actually scientifically proven.
Mhm.
There are some slight hormonal differences, obviously,
Mhm.
because there are slight hormonal differences in general between men and women.
Mhm.
Because women have more estrogen and men have more testosterone, the chemical makeup of the emotional experience biologically is slightly different, but it's
Mhm.
negligible. The vast majority of emotional expression is societal. So it's how we're conditioned to emote, to think about emotion, to feel emotion.
Mhm.
Um, and that I find so interesting because it's always the guys that argue, well, this is just how we are.
Yeah.
But that's not true. It is a skill set, not a trait. So it is a societal trait, but it's not a
Yeah.
biological one.
Ooh, okay, so let's sit with that for a little bit more.
Yeah.
It is a skill set, not a trait.
Yeah.
'Cause it sounds like you're saying, okay, they basically experience emotions the same ways, which tells me a lot of it is that societal conditioning.
Mhm.
And my perspective is right now in society, and this is one of the reasons I wanted to have you on so badly, is there's a lot of, toxic masculinity. And in my mind, the cure for the toxic masculinity is increasing that emotional intelligence, that ability to just figure out how to navigate those things. And so it's interesting that you're like, no, this is a skill set. It doesn't mean that you can never learn how. Like that's just society saying
Oh, yeah.
this is how you're supposed to be a man.
Absolutely. Well, and I do want to address this too because I hate buzzwords because
Mhm.
they start out as beneficial as, pointing to something, and then they
Yeah.
turn into these political, and then people spout them and have no idea either what they mean or what they're supposed to mean, blah 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 blah.
Uh-huh.
So I would like to address the phrase toxic masculinity as
Uh-huh.
authentic masculinity.
Interesting. Okay. Give me more of a definition on that one.
Okay, because really what you're saying when people are using toxic masculinity, number
Uh-huh.
1, people that don't get it think you're saying that masculinity itself is toxic
Right.
versus iterations of status quo,
Mhm.
old ways of thinking versions of masculinity that aren't helpful or healthy or beneficial to you and your relationships. That's what
Mhm.
toxic masculinity is, right?
Mhm.
So I find that saying authentic masculinity just wipes all the confusion out, because what it is the positive aspects of being a masculine man. Um, and also the fact that masculinity is a subjective experience, right?
Yeah.
There are chemically hormone based, like testosterone is the masculine hormone, right?
Mhm.
Um, but women have testosterone too. They just have it in less or smaller amounts. There we go.
Yeah.
Um, but it's coming across as your authentic self within your own version of masculinity versus
Hmm.
I have to negate all of my own stuff for this inside the box version that everyone else agrees is how we're supposed to be.
Mhm.
That is, and first of all, like the toxic stuff is, if you're hurting someone, the thumbs up emoji, if you're hurting someone emotionally, psychologically, or physically
Uh-huh.
in the name of masculinity, that is bad. That is
Right.
toxic, right?
Mhm.
It is also not authentic,
Mhm.
because no one is authentically cruel,
Right.
right? That comes from pain and trauma.
Hmm.
And granted, in the few exceptions of brain chemistry, right, like psychopathy and people that are actually chemically deranged and they can't help it.
Uh-huh.
Other than those people,
Yeah.
yeah, it is a conditioned choice that you just habitually continue to make. So,
Ooh. I love that it is a choice. And I wanna just repeat what you said and your definition of authentic masculinity.
mm,
And I wanna kind of use that moving forward through this interview to keep in mind, okay, what we're gonna be talking about is authentic masculinity, and you described it as the positive aspects of being a masculine man.
mm.
So to kind of launch into that, what do you think are some of the outdated societal expectations that are still influencing how men express emotions now?
Yeah, and I think the biggest one is just the foundational assumption
Mhm.
that showing emotion is weakness. Um, and what's so interesting to me is that the reason all of this is so challenging, I think, for men,
Mhm.
is the black and white nature of how it's presented to us,
Mhm.
right? Either you're a strong man or you're a weak man. It's
Hmm.
not that you're strong where you have strengths and weak where you have weaknesses, and you look at the weaknesses as challenges to grow and evolve as a human being and a man.
Mhm.
It's no, uh, these things I'm good at and all these things I'm supposed to be good at, I have to pretend I am so I don't get judged and shamed for it.
Hmm.
So, and I realized I asked me the question again because I was starting to tangent and I was going to go way over here.
Okay. No, just asking about, some of the outdated societal
There it
expectations that
is.
are still
Okay.
influencing men.
So yeah, the classics, boys don't cry,
Yeah.
again, all the sayings, suck it up, man up. Um, Pretty much anything feminine. And this is what's so interesting to me. I like viewing masculine and feminine as being and doing, internal and external, right? Again, they are traits, not who
Mhm.
we are.
Mhm.
Women can be confident and aggressive. Men can be
Mhm.
compassionate and empathetic.
Mhm.
Those are just ways we can be. So when you're stuck in this idea that anything feminine is bad or wrong, or again, you'll be judged and shamed for partaking in
Mhm.
it, you're negating half of your own, not only experiences, but your emotions. These are tools that
Yeah.
inform you about your life experience and that help you to change so that you can have a better one. Right.
Yeah.
So it's all of the things that tell men that they should negate these natural beneficial messages from your body, um in the under the guise of strength and
Mhm.
confidence, right?
Mhm.
So it's the uninformed negative version of fake it till you make it,
Hmm.
right? So if if every man would just learn instead of push it away and pretend, then they
Mhm.
would be all of the things we're all pretending to be,
Yeah.
you know? So, but actually going through it and saying, I don't know, I need help. All of those things. So, all of the things that would help us change are the very things we're told we shouldn't be doing.
Hmm.
So, it's under the guise of um like wartime, right? Let's just go
Mhm.
to an extreme. You can't sit there and say, "Huh, I'm feeling a little anxious about taking this, hill with this grenade in my hand to blow up that bunker that could rip us apart with their machine gun fire. I should probably sit here and think about my emotions and feel them."
Right.
And yeah, clearly that's not the time for that, right? And this is the black and white aspect of it.
Right.
Men are told that that's how they should be in every situation.
Yeah.
Nope, we're in battle. We got to go to war. We got to. No, if you're actually in war or you're in an extreme circumstance that you don't have the space, the time, or the safety for yourself or
Mhm.
somebody else to go through that process, of course you shouldn't do that.
Right.
But to assume that every situation is that
Yeah.
is the misguided part of it.
Yeah, and that gives me a lot more insight into what you were explaining about the authentic self, that
Yes.
that a lot of it's not that either, or it's not that compassion and confidence are mutually exclusive,
Mhm.
and so it's kind of just embracing your personal, true, and authentic experience, so it's not, "Okay, well, this or this," it's, "No, it's this and this."
Yes.
Yes, I'm in a war zone, and I'm also feeling anxious and like I want to hide. I'm not
Mhm.
going to because that's does not gonna fit the situation, right? It's not what I want to do, but I can acknowledge that, yeah, this, and that is a sign of that emotional maturity is allowing space and acceptance for all that parts of self.
Yes, and here's the interesting part. The resulting action is still the same. Going with that
Mm,
analogy, right?
mhm,
I'm not going to acknowledge I'm scared. I'm just going to push it down and take the hill.
hmm,
Okay, that might not matter in the moment, but later, if that's not addressed, you're going to have deeper PTSD because of many
mm,
other reasons, right? Versus, I am going to acknowledge that I'm scared. I'm going to recognize that that's happening. It doesn't even have to take more time. It's simply an
mhm,
acknowledgement of what's happening,
yeah,
accepting that and taking action anyway, instead of avoiding that and using the action to suppress the emotion. So
hmm,
the immediate result is exactly the same. You're still taking action in spite of the emotion, but the investment in later is
mhm,
better because
yeah.
you're allowing what's happening instead of trying to suppress it.
Yeah, it has me thinking about short-term peace and long-term peace, right? We think in the short term, then this will fix it to not address it. But then that's not creating the long-term peace. Like you said, it could lead to more significant PTSD and other issues where the emotion's going to come out
Oh
eventually.
yeah.
We can just either do it consciously or unconsciously, but they're going to
Yeah,
come out.
and it's the simple analogy is it's breath. You can
Yeah.
you can take control of your own breathing if you so choose, or you can just leave it alone and you're still gonna breathe.
Mhm.
Emotions are the same way. They're gonna be there whether you want them to be or not. But if
Yep.
you proactively engage with them, you will
Yeah.
not only build that skill, but the result of
Mhm.
that skill will be a more enjoyable life experience. That's just logically and factually true.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that, and it also has me thinking from what you've been sharing that it's kind of just like an acknowledgement of what is,
Yes.
and just saying, "Okay, no, I'm just going to acknowledge it, but without judging it," because I think it's when
Mhm.
it's that judgment that comes in that then we're trying to suppress it. But noticing, "Okay, am I judging or am I acknowledging?" is a huge self-awareness.
Oh my god, yes. And that's actually I hope I'm not jumping the gun here, but that ties very well into the hero training program that I created for that
Yeah, tell
reason.
us more.
So
Yeah.
I was gonna get there, but it's still early. So yeah, hero training was first of all, it's an acronym. It stands for happening,
Mhm.
experience, response, and opportunity. And it's a system I put together for myself
Hmm.
around that time when my sister died and my family exploded and lost my business, and it was like becoming a new father, especially. This is really where I first noticed it.
Hmm.
I was just angry and
Hmm.
I didn't know why. And I would obviously have these emotional reactions and I would feel compelled to take certain action or talk to my family a certain way.
Hmm.
And excuse me. And I was like, obviously I need to get a handle on this, but first of all, what is even happening? Right? Because I just viewed it as one big thing.
Hmm.
Someone says something or something happens and I feel something and then I feel compelled to react. And it just
Hmm.
feels like this ball of one thing. And so I decided to break it down. I was like, what actually happens? So happening, something happens. Period. These are compartmentalized individual things,
Hmm.
and it allowed me to see, okay, I start here, then I go here, then okay. I have control over this. I do not have control over that. So why am I wasting my time focusing on this? So something happens, you then have an experience. Your experience is your brain and body give you thoughts, emotions, and sensations about what happened. You
Hmm.
then feel compelled because of an emotion to react. You can choose to react or don't choose to stop yourself and it'll just come out.
Hmm.
Or you can pause, allow the emotion, understand where it's coming from, what's happening, move yourself from your amygdala to your prefrontal cortex so you can respond instead of react.
Hmm.
You're still, again, it's like taking the hill again. You're still doing something, you're taking action, you're just doing it proactively and
Hmm.
in a more beneficial way. Um, and then opportunity is basically your downtime. It's
Hmm.
outside of an emotional experience when you're regulated again, being able to dig into it and saying, okay, what happened there? Why did I react this way? And what can I do about it? Because so
Yeah.
often men, and this is a big issue too, we tend not to deal with the emotions that we haven't dealt with until we're having them.
Hmm.
And because again, oh, going to therapy or doing emotion, well, that's women's work and da, 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 all the stereotypes and blah, blah, blah.
Hmm.
So we don't do it unless we have to. And when we have to, we can't because we can't think logically when we're emotional.
Hmm.
And there's this misperception that, oh, well, we're not emotional. We're not sitting in the corner crying. That's not what being emotional is, man. That's what you think. So when you see a woman crying, we say, "Oh, she's getting emotional." But when a guy
Hmm.
is screaming at the top of his lungs, super angry, we don't say he's getting emotional, do we?
Hmm.
No, even though that's exactly what he's doing.
Wow. Yep, you're right. We judge it, don't
Right.
we? He's out of
He's
control.
out of control.
Huh.
And the irony of that is that men view crying as being out of control for them.
Wow. Okay, so I'm just gonna ask for a little bit more clarity on
Yeah.
here.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah, yeah.
as you're talking about reacting versus responding,
Mm.
can you give us a few ideas on how learning how to do that, how it benefits not only yourself, but also what that looks like in relationships and engaging with other people?
Yeah, absolutely. And um starting with the one with yourself, your own
Mhm.
relationship to yourself and how you understand not only what you believe, but how you think and how that affects your life and all of that. It's a huge help because it's really it's acknowledging the elephant in the room in every circumstance. If you're not including all parts of what's happening,
Yeah.
then you don't have some of the information you need to address, adjust, take into account, right? So
Mhm.
again, I'm analogy boy over here, so
Mhm.
uh I've always found it easier for people to understand with different analogies. So uh, like going into the mechanic to get your car
Mhm.
fixed, right? And just look at the transmission. Don't look at any other part of the engine. Well, sir, what if
Mhm.
there's an I don't care. It doesn't matter. It's fine. It'll like that just sounds ridiculous. Why wouldn't
Yeah.
you assess the whole engine to make sure something isn't wrong?
Right.
It's similar. So if you're not addressing everything that's happening, then you don't have the ability to appropriately acknowledge and adjust. So
Yeah.
you're then not coming from a resolved place because there's still things you haven't dealt with. And that comes out in
Mhm.
your behavior. So maybe you're a little snippy with somebody, or you're resentful, or it's all the stuff in the background that comes out, passive aggressive, conversations. Like all of those little things
Mhm.
that come out and inform your relationships, how you talk to yourself in your head, how you talk to your
Mhm.
partner, how you talk to your kids. And all of those communications cycle back to you. So
Mhm.
your family dynamic, and I hear all of so many men talk about, oh, we got to lead our family and you know, we're in charge because we're the man. Great, then prove it. Model
Hmm.
how you're supposed to engage with your own emotional state so you can be big S stoic. So you can be the leader that your family needs.
Hmm.
Besides that, I don't believe that that's a big thing for me. I don't believe that men are the leaders of their family. I believe they are
Mhm.
a leader of their family,
Mhm.
and I think they should be. But this whole thing, oh, yes, women are equal to men, but yeah, we're all human beings and we all have skills and we all have, there are certain things my wife is way better at than I am. She takes
Yeah.
lead on those. That is
Yeah.
how we have a good family dynamic because we use each other's strengths instead of saying, no, you stay over there because you're a woman and I'll stay over here because I'm a man.
Yeah.
Right. So it's how you interact, it's how you resolve differences, it's how you
Mhm.
argue. And all of those things result in how you feel toward the people that you care about,
Mhm.
what you can accomplish, how easy or difficult anything is.
Mhm.
So why wouldn't you do something
Yeah.
that will make your life, your relationships, and your communication better and easier?
Yeah. Okay, so speaking to the relationships things, and I'm totally just gonna yeah, you're totally free to coach me on this thing, okay? So, it's
Okay.
sticking in my head when you said that for men, when they're expressing anger, then they're thinking, "I'm in control," and when they're crying, they're feeling, "I'm out of control,"
Yes.
and also, like, I am aware that I have totally essentially shamed men for expressing their anger. Like,
Mm,
I'm recognizing my own conditioning that I
okay.
have judged that and I have shamed that, "Oh, there's a man that is out of control."
Mhm.
Um, what advice would you have on, like, rewiring that and how to better support. I wish I could remember exactly what things I've said because that might be more helpful, but I'm just wondering, yeah, how do you coach through that? If you're coaching a man whose wife
Yeah.
is getting after him anytime he expresses anger,
Yeah.
how would you navigate that?
Okay. So not just specifically to you, but women in general then.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I will start this by saying I was a guest on a podcast by a guy by the name of Rick Yee. And,
Mhm.
uh, you know, good guy, good character. I appreciate what he does for men,
Mhm.
but he and I fundamentally disagree on a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
But something that he said that introduced me to him, which led to me being a guest on this podcast, was he said, men basically, I'm paraphrasing now, but it's basically men use anger to cry.
Hmm.
And I thought that was a great insight for what it is, but you can't, the problem is stopping there. It's another one of those, oh yeah, okay, that makes sense, and then we just move on. No, 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 no. Now we have to be comfortable with actually crying
Yeah.
because what you're ultimately saying is this is how men are supposed to cry, not this is just how they do, and we should
Hmm.
evolve their abilities. It's no, we've identified it. Okay, that's good, but that's not what it should be. And
Mhm.
um, the big the big thing moving forward with that from the female perspective,
Mhm.
and this I know is going to be hard for a lot of women to hear because I have many women in my own family who fall into this
Mhm.
category.
Yeah.
Um, the First of all, the biggest problem that I see, certainly in our society, but I think in the world in general,
Mhm.
is not men. It's misogyny.
Hmm.
It's just that men tend to portray that more potently, more often than women.
Mhm.
But one of the biggest issues, and this is so ironic too, because of all the men that are discussing these clearly misogynistic things,
Mhm.
then feel like they can't talk to their partners or wives because they misogynistically judge them for it.
Hmm.
So the very misogyny that men are perpetuating, they're receiving from the women in their lives, and they feel shame because of it, and then they're using that as a reason why they don't emote to their partners. Oh, well, she's just going to use it
Mm.
against me in the future.
Interesting. Okay, can you give us a clear example of what that might look like in conversation?
Yeah. So, well, crying is the perfect example, right? A
Uh-huh.
man will express something. He's having a hard time, and maybe he tears up a little bit, and
Uh-huh.
she will say, or even if she doesn't say anything to him, but oh, suck it up, or stop being so
Right.
whiny, or whatever it happens to be. But even if she doesn't say anything, there are plenty of stories of women going to other women and saying, "Oh my god, he just won't. He's crying about this."
Mhm.
It's like viewing it as an emasculating thing instead of a supportive thing. So the criticism for so many women is to watch your own misogyny
Hmm.
and just be aware of it, because that is probably one of the top 3 things I hear from men is, "I can't be vulnerable with my partner because she's gonna use it
Hmm.
against me in the future."
Hmm.
So, they're afraid to open up because of how they're gonna be judged misogynistically by the women in their lives.
Which is pretty heartbreaking, isn't it?
Yeah,
Because I mean, with you working with the men and me working with the women, they all want the same thing. They all wanna have
absolutely.
connection. And a lot of women would say, "No, I want an emotionally mature man." But then if they're shaming them in the moment,
Yep,
and it might be subtle, like you said, maybe it's spoken verbally or maybe it's an eye roll or
yep,
something that's a little bit more passive
yep.
aggressive, but
A
where the men are receiving the message from the women that you are less of a man if you express it in that way.
and even if it's not said explicitly, men pick up
Mhm.
on it because we are hyper aware of any sort of shaming look,
Mm.
signal, body language, anything, like, because we've been set against it our entire lives. That's the thing
Wow.
we don't want. We don't want shame. We don't want judgment. So the second that comes back at us from someone we are we have a desire to
Mhm.
support and lead and care for and connect with, and been told by the same person that this is what they want.
Mhm.
And then when we do, and granted, the the other part of this is that men are dog shit at this, because we have so little experience, compare relatively speaking, because
Huh.
it doesn't mean that women are just naturally better at this. It's just that they are conditioned that doing this work is far more okay for them than it is for us.
Oh, I totally agree. Like, when you look at a bunch of ladies going out together, they all just feel their feelings together, right?
Yeah.
And it seems like, from what I've witnessed from different male interactions, a lot of men, they have to have, like, a shared project, it almost seems like, where it's almost if they're parallel to each other and they don't have to look each other in the eye, it almost feels safer to express emotions.
Yeah, and there is this doing aspect of male
Yeah.
connection, right? And I don't know how legitimate it is, but I've heard the stories of hunter gatherer, comparisons where
Mhm.
women talk more because they needed to when they were gathering to be loud to
Mm.
scare away the predators, whereas the men bond through action because they were not supposed to talk, so they wouldn't scare the prey away, and they had to use hand signals and touch,
Oh,
smacking
that
on their
is
back, and
fascinating.
so it's
Yeah.
I don't know how legitimate that is. I've just heard it before.
Yeah.
Um, and it does make sense, but that's also not an excuse to stay that way. Like, that was
Right.
thousands and thousands of years ago. We don't exist that
Right.
way anymore. So,
Right.
but the whole thing is just being able to have a space. And this is, I had to touch on safe spaces because
Mhm.
that phrase gets such a bad rap. And, all again, the misogynist, oh, I need my safe space.
Mhm.
And yet, the very act of them saying that means they're in a safe space.
Hmm.
Because all being in a safe space is not feeling restricted.
Hmm.
So if you can show up and say whatever the hell you want without fear of retribution or consequences,
Mhm.
that's called a safe space.
Yeah.
And so many guys are viewing it again as this feminine, effeminate, oh, you got to be comfy and cozy. Yeah, what are you doing when you go to the bar and watch a game? You're
Yeah.
comfy and cozy, drinking your beer, high-fiving, eating wings. That is your safe space.
Yeah.
So it's across the board for all of us. It's just how we view those things and then
Mm.
label them as for men or for women when it's all the same thing. It's just a different
Right.
iteration.
Right. Huh. No, I appreciate that, and talking about, yeah, where is your safe space and making that, yeah, calling it what it is.
Yeah.
Um, and I also thought it was interesting, like, I'm all about accountability, and so kind of it sounds like from what you're saying, the accountability piece for the women is allow the men to have their feelings without shaming it. It was interesting when you said men are hyper aware of disapproval, like being aware of how is it that I am showing up. If I
Huge.
do want an emotionally intelligent man, how am I responding to make it safe so that
Mhm.
I can be that safe space?
Mhm.
And then also for the men, practicing again that emotional intelligence of channeling the emotions in, well, I don't want to say safe ways, but I mean, as we've talked about, sometimes it might be the explosion of anger, which is going to be vastly different than like the expression of anger. It's the
Yes.
acting versus the reacting,
I
right?
would say healthy ways, right?
Yeah.
Beneficial ways for the conversation. And here's a
Yeah.
two really big things. Number one, boundaries. And I think it would help everybody to get a firm definition on this because this word gets, sent around all over the place and so many people don't realize what it is. So
Hmm.
many men view boundaries or think that rules are boundaries. I'm
Yeah.
sure you run into this, right? Oh no,
Yep.
you're not allowed to go over, I don't want you out clubbing. You're not going to do that. And it's like, no, I'm
Right.
just setting a boundary. No, dude, you're setting a rule and you're
Yeah.
trying to control someone else's behavior.
Yep.
A boundary, and I know I'm not telling you anything you don't know. A boundary is for you. You are setting a boundary around someone else's action that if they cross that boundary, you will take a reciprocal action that is a consequence to them doing that. So if you're going to speak to me that way, I'm going to leave the room. I am not going to continue talking to you if you're going to talk to me that way. That is a
Hmm.
boundary,
Hmm.
right? So as as much as I'm saying that women, excuse me, need to watch their own misogyny and try their best to be a safe space, they also need to set their boundaries because
Hmm.
there are plenty of men who will just, oh, you're my safe space, blah, 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 and then it's just, oh, that's not healthy either, man. You don't dump your emotions on someone who's willing to talk to you about them. And that's the other
Yeah.
reason that men need community and men need brotherhoods to have this experience with other men instead of just assuming to dump it all on the women in their lives.
Yeah. Yeah. So, in addition to practicing boundaries, what are some other practical tools or strategies that men can use to help them to regulate and express their emotions in more healthy ways?
Okay. I have something specific that I wanted to look up because in my notes, um, I was reminded and I didn't want to forget any of these. Number one, for sure. I have so many notes. I really wanted to talk about a lot of stuff.
Oh, good.
um, no, and I really love being able to have these discussions because matter of factly discussing this stuff is so important,
Yeah.
especially after years and years of yeah, I grew up Irish Catholic. We didn't talk about anything unless we absolutely had to, and then it was as quick as possible to get back to normal. You know,
That's right.
like yeah, I don't want to be feeling this for too long. Hurry up. Okay, here we go. So I'm just going to list them quick, and then I'll give you the
Okay.
deeper explanations. So community, the emotion wheel, I statements, grounding, breathing, and present moment exercises, and understanding the vagus nerve and the sympathetic nervous system.
Awesome.
So those are five real, like practical things that you can do. First of all, community is more of a bigger overarching one that you build over time, of course.
Mhm.
The other ones you can do of your own accord whenever you want. So, um, speaking of community, I actually I've started a meetup group for men in general, but fathers specifically,
Mhm.
stay-at-home dads even more. But it's basically we go to the park once a week because I want to bring my daughter there anyway, and the kids play in the playground, and we can have basically a community men's circle and go through some of my techniques and things, and guys can bring their stuff, and we can work on it.
That's awesome.
So I'm going to be doing that once a week here. Obviously, got to be in
Uh-huh.
LA because that's where I am. But I'm also doing a once a month Zoom call for anyone who can't make it to those. So
Awesome. And yeah, and if they find your I'm gonna put all of your contact information in the show
sure,
notes, so if they find that, they can get in touch with the once a month Zoom call because that sounds
yep,
fantastic.
absolutely. And we'll go through the hero training aspects of things. I have something called emotion surfing that helps you in the moment,
Uh-huh.
and I can explain that. That's part of answering this question for you anyway.
Mhm.
Um, but going back to the emotion wheel, if you don't know what the emotion wheel is, and I know you do, um, there's a great one. You can go to the Gottman group. They have a great one on their website, but just Google emotion wheel and you will get hundreds of iterations. They even have them for kids. It is such a great little tool. It's basically in the well, it's a wheel, right? And the hub of the wheel is the core emotions like anger, sadness, fear, and then each concentric circle that goes out, there are more and less complicated ones, but each
Mhm.
concentric circle has more subtle iterations of the core emotion. So you can
Mhm.
being able to identify and label what you're feeling is a big part of the
Mhm.
process. So having that tool there, and it's in my hero training to uh, have that tool in there for that reason.
Mhm.
Um, but just being able to identify what you're feeling more specifically allows
Yeah.
more awareness, then allows, oh, okay. So not only are you aware of what it is, you're aware of where it is in your body, how it feels. So you're building the skill of recognition. So when it comes up
Mhm.
again, you're like, oh, I know what this is. I know how to deal with it, how to regulate. So it's the starting process of getting to build that skill.
So good. Yeah, I think that a lot of people, especially if they're more on the more emotionally immature side, they basically know 3 emotions. They know sad, mad, and glad.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
really, like, taking that time to really identify the emotion, like, "Okay, well, am I sad or am I grieving? Am I
Mhm.
insecure or am I anxious?" Like, some of
Absolutely.
them are so close. Am I
Yes.
angry or am I unseen? But getting really clear on what the emotion is gives you so
Mhm.
much information so you can actually get your need met. Like,
There it
it's
is.
there to teach you something.
There it is.
So I love that. Big fan of the emotion wheel.
Nice. Yeah, yeah, and it's, I would introduce it to kids as well. It's a great tool.
Yeah.
Um, Number 3, I statements. A big one that I tell my clients is when you're feeling something, when you can identify it, and it sounds so cheesy, and I know it does. Believe me, when I say it to myself, the critic part of my brain goes, "Oh, you're such an idiot. Don't say that." And it's I'm feeling, insert the emotion, and that's okay.
Mhm.
That's all it is. I'm feeling angry, and that's okay. But what you're doing is you're taking away the story and the meaning and the judgment
Mhm.
because it's simply information. It's chemical, hormonal information your body is giving you as a reaction to an experience. That's it. But then we
Mhm.
add all this meaning and story around where it's coming from and why it's there and how we should feel about it and what this person's going to think. That's the stuff that is the issue.
Mhm.
And that's my favorite thing about emotions. Chemically
Mhm.
speaking, an emotion lasts 90 seconds. Well,
Isn't that amazing?
that can't
And, like
happen. Right,
and to
yeah,
just feel it for 90 seconds and
yeah,
think about how much time and energy we invest into resisting it, when it's like, dude, if you could just sit there for 90 seconds and say, "Hey, I'm feeling this way and that's
yeah,
okay,"
yeah,
and then you're done,
yeah, and
that's
that's the
so
thing.
much better than resisting for years and then blowing up.
Well, yeah, and just the fact that then you don't have to continue feeling it because there's
Right.
this assumption that, "Oh, well, I'm pissed off." Well, if that's true, then why am I pissed off days and weeks later? Because you
Right.
keep telling yourself the story that your system goes, "Oh, we're not done with this emotion yet, so let's keep the chemicals going."
Mhm.
So you think you're doing it in response to your body continuing to give you this emotion, and it's really your body keep continuing to give you the emotion in response to
Mhm.
the story you're telling.
Yeah. Yeah, well, and I heard one definition of trauma that I thought was super interesting, but they said, "Trauma is just unprocessed emotion."
Yes.
And it kinda blew my mind because I think we think about trauma as a huge major event,
Uh-huh.
but when it's unprocessed emotion and you're choosing to, ruminate on it or suppress it or,
Yeah.
not process it, it's kinda self-inflicted trauma. I mean, maybe something really did happen that's
No, of
attached to
course,
it,
of course.
but how many little things are self-inflicted simply because we're not taking the time to just feel it?
Yeah. Yeah, and that's the ultimate like, my six-year-old refuses to take medicine, just
Mhm.
absolutely can't stand it. You know, you have 101 fever, you're sweating, and your head is pounding, but somehow taking just kinda tastes bad, daddy. That's worse? But that's the
That's
thing.
such a perfect
It
example.
it and I'm like, "Kiddo, I am not gonna hold you down and shove it down your throat, but I'm telling you, you're going to feel better if you do this." "I don't wanna do it." So she
Mhm.
stays miserable simply
Mhm.
because she doesn't want a little discomfort in her mouth. So,
Yep.
yeah, it's that, "Nope, I'm not gonna deal with this, and I'm just gonna pretend that how I'm experiencing things going forward is normal,"
Yeah.
and
Yeah,
it's
I
not.
love that. Yep. Yep, so take the time to process it, use
Yes.
the I statements, "I'm feeling this way, and it's okay."
Mhm.
Alright, and number 4,
Number
grounding
4.
and practicing presence. Yeah, tell us more on that one.
Okay. Oh, I lose my place? I did, I'm talking too much. Grounding, oh, shoot, I went way down. Grounding, breathing, and, uh, present moment exercises, right?
Mhm.
So, the reason this is important is because basically what you're trying to do is get yourself out of your amygdala, out of your emotional brain and into your
Mhm.
logic center, because then you can think rationally. If you're stuck in your fight or flight, your parasympathetic nervous system, you are acting purely on emotion. And that can be
Mhm.
a good thing when it's called for. But so many of those experiences are in interactions and fights and relationship and all of that. And that's when it doesn't serve you. Right. So being able to breathe and ground yourself interrupts the emotional experience you're having and brings you back to your logic center. It doesn't make the emotion just go away.
Mhm.
It just it's kinda like it brings your head above the surface of the water with regard to, and
Mm.
then you can kinda survey like, "Oh, okay." And then you move into something, and this is I call it the watcher. It's the
Mhm.
part of yourself that notices how you're feeling. And I wanna give this person credit, but I forget their name. It was a TikTok that I saw, and I thought it
Mhm.
was such a great way of saying it. The part of you that notices you're angry isn't angry.
Hmm. I love that.
So and I use that often because that is you returning to your rational thought. It's
Yeah.
the higher part of you that isn't experiencing the emotion that is,
Mhm.
and I view it kinda like, and, the example I like to use because this works for men big time is in the Avengers, Doctor Strange. He
Mhm.
has that ability where he can basically just hit you in the chest and your essence pulls out of your body,
Yeah.
right? It's kinda like that where you pull back and you can watch yourself being angry.
Hmm.
And this is where you make those decisions from. I'm gonna pause.
Right.
I'm gonna
Right.
breathe. I'm gonna ground myself.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like essentially stepping out of that fight or flight response and turning on that prefrontal cortex, which is the watcher, right? It
Yeah.
helps you be more consciously aware
Yeah.
and be able to act rather than react through that fight or flight lens. So, yeah, I love that,
And
becoming the watcher.
a lot of this comes from learning about dealing with tantrums as a parent, because
Hmm,
you're you're parenting yourself through a tantrum is what you're doing,
right.
right? But especially guys, we don't wanna think of it that way. But you're really you're you're giving yourself the ability to say, "Oh, buddy, it's okay. I know you're
Yeah.
pissed off," or and it's not in a, demeaning way.
Yeah.
It's almost like a child or like a dog or, it's just like, "Oh, you don't understand. It's okay. I'm here for you." Right? So,
Yeah.
when you can move into that part of yourself, you have this ability to really have more control, and that's the point. Hero training is creating these pockets of control in a
Mhm.
usually, how it feels, a very uncontrollable situation, right?
Mhm.
So, the present moment, exercise that I love, and this is good for kids who are having tantrums.
Mhm.
You ask them to point out things in the room. What color is that lamp? What size is that picture frame?
Mm.
You're asking about tangible things that they have to use their logical brain to identify. It
Right.
forces you out of your emotion, if only for that moment, into your logic, and it
Yeah.
helps pull you out of the fight or flight.
I love that. To yes, really bring yourself back, and I love how you said, "Oh, yeah, it's just parenting yourself through a tantrum."
Yeah,
I'm gonna start using that in my, like, self-coach now, like, "Alright, this is a little bit of a tantrum."
yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh
Okay,
god, I
what
have
do I
them all the
need?
time. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, because when you get stuck in your head, we
Mhm.
don't see it as throwing a tantrum, but that's really what it is,
Right,
right?
we're
We
just
feel
not
so
adding.
justified and
Yeah,
yeah,
we're
righteous
just not
indignation.
we're not adding the child physicality of flopping on the ground and going,
Right.
"Yeah," but it's the same thing is happening in our head.
Right, and
So,
even if
yeah.
we're not acting out, like, it might be silent and in your head that you're throwing a tantrum is just really
Mhm.
entertaining.
Oh, yeah.
Yep, that's funny because
Mhm.
yeah, because when you consider it a tantrum, then you want to show up as the adult, right? So
Right.
then it's like, "Okay, I guess I will parent myself through this
Yeah.
tantrum and act like a grown-up instead of like the two-year-old that's in my head right now."
Yes, and this connects big time to, and I why do I feel like I already mentioned this? But the idea that actions and emotions are not the same thing. I think I
Yeah.
mentioned it earlier. But
Yeah, but expand on it.
yeah, because this is huge, and this is what that pause in the hero training is. It's right
Yeah.
right in between experience and, response. That's the place where you have
Mhm.
control, because so many people, phrases like, "What was I supposed to do?" Or "I didn't have a
Mhm.
choice," right? What you're really saying is, "I didn't choose to manage my actions. I
Hmm.
allowed the emotion to inform my actions, and I just went with it." That is that emotional wave.
Huh. I allowed the emotion to control my actions.
Yeah.
That's a big deal
Mhm.
because then you're choosing it, essentially. I think,
Oh,
yeah,
yeah.
especially with anger, we just assume, well, it's everybody else's fault. If everybody else would just do exactly what I wanted them to do, then I
Right,
wouldn't ever act poorly, but
right.
that's never gonna happen.
No. No, 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 no. You basically succumbed
Yeah.
to an overwhelming emotional experience,
Huh.
and the skill is feeling that emotion, allowing that emotion, and
Mhm.
curbing the behavior. So
Hmm.
when people say, "Oh, you shouldn't be angry at that."
Mhm.
Yeah, I should, because I am. There is no should or shouldn't. I am or I am not.
Mhm.
But you shouldn't punch someone in the face because you're
Right.
angry about that. That is the should or shouldn't.
Right.
So,
That the emotion is not the problem, but
right.
how you choose to respond to it might be.
And unfortunately, many people equate emotion and action in that way.
Hmm.
So they justify their actions because of their emotion, which
Yeah.
those are two separate things.
Hmm. Interesting. Yeah, this has been such a fascinating conversation. Okay, wait, and then we need to touch too on there's one more, right?
Oh,
Understanding the vagus nerve and sympathetic nervous system. Can we
yes.
talk on that
Yes.
one?
All right, so this is huge because, the vagus nerve or the vagal nerve comes
Mhm.
from your spine around, on either side of your, chest cavity, basically,
Mhm.
and it connects to your, heart and your digestive system. So it's the main branch of nerves, that part of your nervous system that has direct access to all the stuff you don't control. Your
Mhm.
breathing, your blinking, the stuff you can control, but that, you know, um, not the average person can't control their heartbeat, but there are monks who can do it. Um, so stuff like that you don't control, your autonomic stuff.
Mhm.
And when you can, adjust how the vagal nerve is reacting, that also allows you to calm. It gets you out of fight or flight because
Mhm.
that part of your body has direct access. So, one of my absolute favorite things, I have other healthcare practitioners in my life, and one of them, whenever he sees me, first he gives me a hug, and then he puts one hand on my chest, one hand on my back, directly across from each other, and
Mhm.
just breathes for like 30 seconds.
Hmm.
And that right there, because you're hitting the vagus nerves,
Yeah.
and you feel supported, you feel connected,
Mhm.
and you feel held. And
Hmm.
there is something inherently comforting about being held,
Yeah.
especially as a man, where so many of us don't feel comfortable being held by anyone but a woman that we're physically intimate with, right? Like
Mhm.
even just a friend, I can give you a hug, but if it's too long, then oh, whoa, hey,
Right.
but
Right.
if it's another guy, forget about it.
Yeah.
I'll give you a bro tap and then
Right.
handshake and we're good. Um, it's actually a challenge that I have in a program that I created for men is you have to hug another man through 2 full breaths
Huh.
just because of how uncomfortable it is
Yeah.
to get used to the fact that,
Interesting.
you know, being because we got to get rid of the idea that being intimate means being sexual because it's not.
Yeah.
It's not the same thing.
Yep.
Um, so understanding how the vagus nerve works
Mhm.
and even putting an ice pack here to cool that part of
Mhm.
your body helps. And as you're breathing, slow, deep breaths also activate or deactivate the vagus nerve. So
Hmm.
just your awareness of that part of your body and how it functions
Mhm.
allows for those tools and things you can do in the moment.
Hmm. That is so fascinating. Chris, this has been such an amazing conversation. And I know we've touched on so many things, but if you had to pick one key takeaway from
Mm.
today, what would you like people to really remember?
um, well, I think it's kind of what we started with, the idea that this is not a trait, it's a skill.
Hmm.
This is not something that some people have and some people don't, or that you shouldn't have because you're a man.
Mhm.
This is a choice. This is something you can learn. And proof of that is because of what you have learned.
Mhm.
All of the ways that you interact and you function that continue to bring up these challenges for you, these emotional challenges, and dealing with it the way you have been either hasn't worked or hasn't worked in the way you'd like.
Mhm.
The reason for that is you're not viewing it correctly.
Hmm.
So if you can just get it out of your head that this is just, oh, well, I'm a man and this is how it is, you can choose not to do it. And that's perfectly fine. I'm not telling you what you're supposed to do. I'm telling you that
Mhm.
if you want this, it's very achievable, but it's like any other skill. You're going to be crap at it at first and you got to practice. And
Yeah.
when you can surround yourself with other people who support that and practice with you, again, it's like any other skill. It's like bricklaying. It's like
Mhm.
learning guitar. It's whatever you're doing, surround yourself with people who are also doing that. And you will
Yeah.
get out of the judgment and shame aspect of it and be able to show up authentically and then have a better experience. So there you go.
I love that. Yeah, that's beautiful, and, like, kind of just acknowledging I love how you said, "Yeah, you need to acknowledge what isn't working."
Mm.
I think really often we think, "Okay, well, what I'm doing not s isn't working, so I'm gonna try doing exactly what I've been doing harder."
Yeah,
Right?
yeah,
And
yeah,
it's like, maybe it's time for something new. Like, be willing to admit, "Okay, this
absolutely.
isn't getting me the result that I want. What else is available? What else is out there?" And speaking of, how can people find you if they wanna learn more about what you've got going on?
Absolutely. So I'm keeping it simple today. I am just gonna give everyone my TikTok handle and my email address.
Great.
So it's at dadding daily, but it's dadding underscore daily. So DADDING underscore DAILY. And then my email address is daddingdaily 1980. Nice little iteration there. Daddingdaily1980 at Gmail. So if you have interest, if you have questions, you want to reach out, um, I am I really pulled back from trying to have, a funnel system and a payment system and like
Mhm.
I just work with who wants to work with me, and we discuss what my time and their value slash money is worth, and we figure it out. So, if you want to do this work, I always do free consultations, and we can just have a conversation. You can also join the free groups. I'm there for that. The I will send you the link to the meetup group, so
Awesome.
you can post that. But yeah, just find me on TikTok, shoot me a DM, or shoot me an email, and we'll have a talk.
Yeah, go follow Chris. He has amazing content. I love how engaged he is with all of his listeners. Like somebody comments and he'll do a whole post on just that one idea. And so, yeah, everybody should go follow him. I know he's a coach for men, but go follow him, ladies. He's got some good content. So, thank you so much for being here.
I appreciate it very much, MaryAnn. Thank you so much. And I do have 50% female audience, so I'm doing something right there
Nice.
too.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thank you so much. Yeah, you're a wealth of knowledge, and I learned a lot today. So, thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me again. It was great to be
All
here.
right. Well, have a great week, everybody. We'll see you next time.